The clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1. Marty Van Ravensway, Commissioner Precinct 2. Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here. Present.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Father Hasso from the All Saints Catholic Church of Fort Worth. Father Hasso, it's great to have you here today. After the invocation, please remain standing for the pledges.
My sincere thanks above all for inviting me to be here with you this morning as you begin your work day. My special thanks to Judge Glenn Whitley and our commissioners. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Lord, we acknowledge that you are a loving and merciful God, that in you we live, we move, and we have our being. Grant us your wisdom as we begin our work today. Bless our thoughts, our actions, so that they may be in accordance to your will. Grant us your spirit of justice as we put into action your words. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for your reward is great in heaven. Let us also pray for our president and for our leaders in Washington, that they may find the best solution to the financial problems facing our country. And may God bless you with every good gift from on high. May he keep you pure and holy in his sight at all times. May he bestow the riches of his grace upon you and always fill you with love for all people. We ask this from you, our loving Creator and Sustainer of all that exists. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you again, Father Hasso, for coming today. Appreciate it.
Father Hasso, thank you for all that you do for this community, sir. You are truly one of the ecumenical stars around here, and I admire you greatly.
Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have two announcements this morning. The first is under the Juvenile Services section. It is item 9H2. This concerns a contract with UNT Health Science Services for on-site psychiatric services. We're going to ask that that particular item be held for 1 week. Also, Your Honor, under the Auditors section, under 9B1, that's a consent item, and that can remain a consent item. However, when we get to that particular part of the agenda, we'd like to just have 1 moment to make an announcement to the court.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of September the 23rd.
Move approval. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. You have before, let's see, proclamations and resolutions. Commissioner Van Ravensway.
Yes, we have the proclamation that the court presented you last Thursday evening for the Outstanding Citizen for Seniors of 2008. And since you normally read it in, you don't have to read your own proclamation, but I think it would be a good thing for everybody to hear the proclamation, so I'm going to read it. Whereas Tarrant County Judge Glenn Whitley is a longtime advocate for seniors and has, over many years, shown a steadfast commitment to improving the health and well-being of the elderly, and whereas he is keenly aware of the crucial quality of life issues for seniors, issues such as affordable health care and prescriptions, the need for transportation, and the need to maintain an independent living situation while reducing senior isolation. And whereas Judge Whitley has always been a strong advocate for increasing van transportation for seniors and now is working to bring passenger rail, which will benefit many seniors, to the west side of the Metroplex. And whereas he has also been a leader in the effort to improve the region's air quality because of high levels of ozone and other pollution compromise for the health of seniors and others with chronic respiratory disease, and because it is the right thing to do. And whereas a longtime supporter of improving mental health care in North Texas, Judge Whitley also served in the past as a Fort Worth Alzheimer's Association board member. And whereas he understands that we need to prepare our community to accommodate our growing senior population, that our solutions to the issues we face must be need-based and not age-based, and that the social services network to support our aging population needs to be expanded. And whereas Judge Whitley is this year's recipient of the Senior Citizen Services Outstanding Citizen for Seniors Award, an honor presented annually to a local leader who best exemplifies concern, caring, and compassion for older citizens, older adults. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do congratulate Tarrant County Judge B. Glenn Whitley for his commitment to senior citizen needs and for the honor of being named the Senior Citizen Services Outstanding Citizen for Seniors Award of 2008. In witness hereof, and we declare that on September the 23rd.
I guess since he's already got it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just glad we didn't read it that night. We'd have still been there.
That's why I didn't read it, Glenn. Everybody had already said all these really nice things about the judge, and so I just got up and said, all this stuff has already been said, and I'm not going to read it, and since he usually reads it anyway, we're not going to ask him to read it. So we gave him his plaque, but I thought you should hear what he had to say. So move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote. The motion passes 4-0.
Doesn't work.
Thank you all very much. I again appreciate the resolution, and appreciate y'all being there. It was a great night, and it was a neat honor.
We saw the 32-second flight.
Yeah, I'm anxious to get the whole video. They did show a little bit of the F-16 ride that I got.
Oh, really?
They deleted the part where you lost your lunch.
No, I didn't lose no lunch. I came back. That bag was empty when I got back. So
But he was sure breathing hard.
yeah, there was a couple of times in there when it was touch and go. I'll tell you that. But it was a lot of fun.
Loop to me.
Well, it was that too.
Then the best part, though, at the end, your wife seduced you off the stairs.
Did what?
And they poured a 5-gallon bucket of water on his head, and he had the most shocked expression on his face.
But I'm going to tell you, at that point in time, that bucket of cold water felt awfully good. Felt awfully good. Okay, the next item we have is the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a public hearing today. Patricia?
We're requesting a public hearing to consider amendments to the program years 2005, 2006, and 2007 for the consolidated action plans. These amendments consist of reallocating $1.2 million, $31,536 of home funds to rehab and acquisition. What we're really doing is expanding what we can do with these funds to include rehab with new acquisition in light of the current situation. We also are requesting to reallocate $6,000 from Texas Inmate Services and $8,000, and $6,000 from the Community Enrichment Center to the Presbyterian Night Shelter. We go through an RFP process every year, and at the end of the year, we look at the allocations, and we're shifting them around to where the need is. But it's basically technical amendments. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing at this time and ask if there's anyone here to speak to this item. Hearing none, then I will close the public hearing.
Your Honor, there's no action requested at this time.
Okay?
I'd like more information on the reallocation of dollars from Texas Inmate Services to the Presbyterian Night Shelter. Those are both very worthy organizations in our community. What's the purpose?
They're operational, and we allocate every year, and at the end of the year, we make adjustments, and again, at the next year, we'll come back and allocate again to Texas Inmate Services. It's just a matter of making sure that we close out our programs. It's adjustments, basically, and they've agreed to this also.
Simply to make sure that all the money's
Yeah.
spent.
Thank you. Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 4 additional items for you this morning. The first one concerns legislative issues for the 81st session of the Texas Legislature. I'm going to ask Mr. Mendez to come up and address the Court at this time.
Good morning, Your Honor, and court members. What you have before you is the package of legislative issues that we discussed last week during briefing session. We have made the modifications according to the discussion at that meeting to several of the issues. Specifically, on page number 3, we've added revenue caps to that policy statement. On page number 5, we've incorporated the suggested language to the transportation transit policy statement. In the first bullet point, adding other needed transportation improvements, and we added a bullet point encouraging the state to find additional funding for transportation. On page 11, we modified that policy statement to not emphasize a local option sales tax, but just local option funding for regional rail in North Texas. On page 13, there was some extended discussion about the verifiable paper trail, and we completely reworded that policy statement according to the recommendations of Commissioner Brooks and Judge. And finally, on page 14, we moved that policy statement from the to be filed section to the issues to support section. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, court members? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Members of the Court, we can now move to item 2. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve a resolution relating to the issuance of tax-exempt Series 2008 revenue bonds by the Tarrant County Cultural Education Facilities Finance Corporation to the Texas Health Resources in the amount not to exceed $400 million. Along with this request and actions by the corporation, there is a letter from Texas Health Resources as it relates to the Tarrant County Hub policy, which is attached. Also, we've been advised that there are no restrictions placed on the properties that would restrict the current or future use of these properties for health or governmental purposes.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion is second. So again, when we do that check on restrictions, we're checking on any properties that we may own or have any.
That they own, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, members of the Court, on item number 3, this is an amendment to an existing contract. It's for reporting services for Criminal District Court number 3 for FY 2009. Judge Berry had come to the court previously in April of this current year to begin this particular contract. She's very pleased with how this contract is working. She is requesting that we renew the contract, and staff is recommending approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Finally, members of the Court, on item number 4, we're requesting that the Court approve an amendment to the agreement for funding of the Department of Family and Protective Services staff for FY 2009.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Tidwell?
Thank you.
Agenda item this morning is to ask the court to receive and file the Tarrant County financial statements for the 11 months ended August 2008. Your handout is just a recap of the current investments that the county has in light of what's going on in some of the markets elsewhere. We did receive the $112 million in bond proceeds that Mr. Manius referred to earlier. That money will be invested, as you see at the bottom of the page. It's invested in agencies, United States agencies, Fannie Mac, Freddie Mac, and the Federal Home Loan Bank. As of tomorrow, we're going to take a substantial amount of money out of the pools, $100 million, and invest it, as you see below that, into, again, the Federal Home Loan Bank, or the Fannie and the Freddie. This will guarantee that the interest earnings that were used in the revenue projections in preparation of the budget will be able to ensure that we meet those so that we will not fall short of the projected interest earnings. And we will continue to look for other ways to diversify our funds. Recently, we have also added the Chase CDs that you see about in the middle of the page, and the rates listed there, the LIBOR minus the 40 basis points. Today, that's 3.54. Those are both collateralized. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have about what we're doing in investments.
Any questions? Thank you. Appreciate it.
I would ask that you receive and file the financial statements.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Snyder?
We have before you the special purpose budgets for the fiscal year 2009. Just a note regarding capital, there were a couple of additions that are made, minor in the scheme of things. They're listed there on the cover page of your communication. And just a note, as far as special purpose budgets go, there was one additional new position in Fund 211, which is county clerk's specialized fee for records automation and preservation. And then, of course, public health is included as a special purpose budget, and they had 3 positions that we talked about during the budget hearings.
So I move for approval for accepting all of the special purpose budgets.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Your Honor. We have one release and indemnification agreement. It's part of an agreed judgment. Actually, the agreed judgment is what we have in this condemnation case. It's settled without any money additionally. It's settled for the special commissioners, and I believe you've been briefed on this, but it's been a few weeks ago.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Phillips.
Good morning. It is requested that Commissioners Court authorize county staff to conduct negotiations with Yates Construction Company for construction management services related to the civil courts building that was included in the 2006 capital improvement program.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, make us proud.
Ms. Glenn.
Just keep that enthusiasm you brought with us.
To receive and
with you
file
last
the
week.
personnel agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Glenn.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Glenn.
Public Health, Ms. Brewer. Good morning.
Public Health seeks your approval of interim financing for fiscal year 2009 grants for tuberculosis refugee health. Advanced Practice Center, and our Women, Infants, and Children's Program, WIC. We have no outstanding requests from the past.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
They were fearful of the outcome till they started scoring on us, so.
Well said. Well said.
It's going to be a long season.
That's where the other half of my income is gone. Half of it goes to LSU and half of it goes to Texas, or has gone to Texas.
Long day. We have 8 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for RFP number 2008-185. This is an RFP for the Tarrant County Records Management Center shelving system. Recommendation will be to award the Warehouse Rack LP in the amount of $637,173.82. We're also seeking contract approval as well as acceptance of the payment and performance bonds.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-199. This is our annual contract for the purchase of track loaders. Our recommendation will be to award on a per unit price basis and the optional price list, awarding certain items to RDO Equipment and Holt Cat.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-187. This is our annual contract for water treatment services for our county buildings. We're recommending awarding on a per unit price basis, selecting as our primary vendor Chem Aqua, as our secondary vendor Nalco Company.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Number 4 is another bid award recommendation for RFP number 2008-183. This is an RFP for a rapid prototype implementation and study for electronic medical record system for the health department. Recommendation would be to award to Clear Health the amount of $45,000.
Move approval. And can we expand this to MHMR, for instance, and try to entice JPS into the system?
Just what I sent an email to Mr. Smith about this morning.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jack. Yes, we're currently working with JPS, as you're aware, Commissioner Brooks. MHMR, we're trying to get them to join the fold in creating a health information exchange model so that we can start sharing information between the agencies.
Wonderful.
We have a motion, but do we have a second?
We do not.
Second.
We now do. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our number 5 is another bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-194. This is our annual contract for aggregate road surface treatment. Recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis, awarding certain items to Shea Services, TXI Operations, Vulcan Material, SAT Trucking.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our item number 6 is also a bid award recommendation in regards to bid number 2008-170. This is our annual contract for copier maintenance. Our recommendation would be to award on a per unit price basis and a per copy basis, awarding certain sections to Neville Business Systems and Rico Business Solutions. We are also recommending rejection of the bid received from Accelerated Office Systems, not including the required certification.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We also have an audience participation form from, is it Mary Diskew? Please state your name and your address, and then,
Mary Disk.
Okay, sorry about that.
624 Foxcraft Drive, Fort Worth, Texas, 76131. You should have copies to refer. I guess you're referring to them up there. With respect to bid number 2008-170, specifically the Minolta DIs, the Minolta EPs, and the Minolta Biz Hubs, we would like to address the court today. And before I begin, let me state that our request today concerns only the Minolta copier product line, so please note that for yourselves. We are not asking to have any other part of the bid rejected. First, let us point out that we live in Tarrant County. We are taxpayers in Tarrant County, so what happens here today matters to us a great deal, not only as a business but also individually. As you may or may not know, Accelerated Office Systems was the lowest bidder on the 2008-170 bid. In fact, as witnessed at bid opening and recorded, Accelerated Office Systems was in fact the only bidder on several pieces of equipment we have been servicing for 8 years. While we have met 10 of the 11 criteria prerequisites to qualify on this bid, the only thing we lack in the eyes of purchasing is factory-trained certificates for the Minolta equipment. While we hear this, we do not understand this, as it has not been an issue or problem in the past, and I repeat, has not been an issue in the past. We view it as a mere technicality. However, for some unknown reason, this year has become a huge roadblock in our dealings with purchasing. For many years, we have been qualified, and now purchasing states we are not. With 29 years in this industry and success in keeping county equipment running all this time, even when the county departmental budgeting didn't allow for replacement of 12 and 13-year-old machines, and providing many extra services to the county for little or no charge while receiving commendable customer satisfaction, purchasing chooses now to reject our bid? It doesn't make sense to us either, and after speaking with a few of the county departments, it doesn't make sense to them either. Now that the court has been filled out on the details of the problem at hand, we would respectfully ask that the court let the people decide. As after all, we do live in a democratic society. Let the people who deal with us in the various departments and who deal daily with the equipment we successfully continue to service decide whom they want as their servicing company. Please understand that we're not here to point fingers or make the situation personal, even though we're not clear on the decision of purchasing, but rather at this time we choose to take the high road. In doing so, we would request that the court reject this bid as it stands, with respect only to the Minolta part of the bid, and conduct a poll of their own, whether verbal or written, to determine how the departments feel about the decision purchasing has made to remove Accelerated Office Systems as the current servicing company. Again, reminding the court that we were indeed the lowest bidder, and upon finding dissatisfaction with some of the past decisions that purchasing has made in regard to the departmental needs. Furthermore, while doing so, please report the supporting documentation and confirm that we were indeed the lowest bidder and have had a successful working relationship with Tarrant County for many years. And after such poll is conducted, then please demonstrate to us why we should not be awarded this bid. Finally, as we acknowledge it is our last day to service Tarrant County under the present contract, if the court agrees to our request, it would leave the county without service. However, we would offer to extend the service for the county at no charge to the county while allowing the court time to conduct this poll, thus providing the county service coverage so that the departments will not be without a contract. Accelerated Office Systems thanks the court for its time and awaits a response.
thank you. Jack? Would you like to respond?
Accelerated Office Systems has been a very good vendor for Tarrant County. They've serviced us for a long time. I don't view this as a technicality per se, the requirement for certification. They actually brought this to our attention last year, had a problem with a previous bid because we had received bids from a new company that we weren't as familiar with, although we checked them out as best we could, and they seemed like a viable company. I'm not sure how you can request something a previous time in regards to response received from a new vendor, and then dispute that the following year. We actually thought that they had a pretty good suggestion. We required certification. It was mentioned in a mandatory pre-bid conference. They were the only bidder on those items. However, we have an existing bid in place, which is still viable to take care of those items, as well as the ability to procure services from a state contract. So we're not left without service. We can handle.
Are they the existing bid in place?
No. Is that correct? They are not the existing bid in place for those items, or are they?
For the Minolta items?
No, sir.
I guess I don't understand.
I don't either.
I don't either.
She left me with the impression that they currently are servicing those items.
And will continue to serve.
And would continue to do so.
They do service some of the DI models. They do service the EP models. But because of their because of our discussions with them last year concerning the copier maintenance bid and the lack of certification on the company that we were going to recommend, we included that in this year's contract. This was also covered in our mandatory pre-bid conference. And during that time, I noted not only the page that it was on, but we also provide a checklist for our vendors to utilize to not to forget certain critical items to be submitted with the bid.
Have you had a problem with this vendor? Have they done a satisfactory job?
They've done an excellent job for us, and I stand by that statement.
How long have they been servicing our county?
Several years.
Without certification all these years? But now we put a certification on there they don't have, and they're not qualified?
Did I understand they asked for somebody else to have the certification?
They questioned a potential award last year, but that with the necessity to have certification, and we felt like it was a fair request.
Hold it, stop.
Well,
Just a second. Y'all can come up and respond in just a minute, but we're not going to respond from a distance. So I guess the question is, we added certification this year.
Yes, sir.
These people have been working, and it looks like that they're a low bidder on a number of things, and they've given us good service in the past.
That's correct.
Not had problems with them in the past.
Not at all. Never an issue.
And they're Tarrant County based, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This section 6 is all Minolta EPs, and they are servicing the EPs currently. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I withdraw my second to the motion.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we take no action on this today, and let's get with purchasing and find out exactly what the real problem is.
And I guess, okay, I mean, I hear that, and I heard them say that they were only interested in the Minolta, but, I mean, again, from a bid standpoint, it doesn't appear, if I'm reading this right, nobody else bid Minolta. You're shaking your head yes, that means no?
You are correct that nobody else bid Minolta.
Okay. And they were low bid, in addition to them being the only ones that bid on the Minolta, they were the low bid on Panasonic, and Canon. Canon by quite a bit.
The only one they weren't low bid on was Sharp.
Yeah, I guess that's right, Canon and
They were
Casera.
$106 high on Sharp.
Okay, now, I guess, let me ask them one question. Why didn't, on the certification, what is your version of the certification discussion?
We didn't recommend them anything. We knew other companies were asking because last year, the company that won it had lost, taken away other products like the Kia Ceras and others. And the servicing dealer then asked, is that person certified? And I think that's maybe where they got that from, not from us.
Are y'all certified in any of the copiers, or are you just, I mean?
We're certified on some of the Minoltas, but not all of them. I mean, it's hard to have all of those certificates for everything. I mean, I don't think there's a company out there that's going to actually have all those certificates. Okay. I mean, that's...
If you could show us a company that had all their certificates in the DFW area, it would be...
Especially on the older equipment.
Unbelievable.
I mean, the older equipment like the EPGC Minolta didn't even pick it up on the second bid. They said, we don't even want to service that equipment. I mean, it's hard to get all of those certificates for everybody. We've been in the business for 28 years, and our technicians, well, 29 years, and some of our technicians have 20 years, 15 years experience. We pretty much know how to work on copiers by now.
Okay, thank y'all. I guess if we just take no action at this point in time, then that particular...
Well, what's that going to do for us because our contract ends?
We still offer to extend it and no charge to the county with respect to what we are now servicing. What all?
Obviously, you couldn't ask other people like the Kia Ceres. We don't service those.
Let me ask another,
how our
hold
service
up.
is.
Donald, are you telling me that our copier contract ends today?
Yes.
Then why is this just now coming to us today?
We've been...
No, that's not for y'all. Y'all back up. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Why are we just now getting it today, Jack, if it ends today?
It took us a little bit longer to evaluate the bid document than we originally expected it to.
Jack, how big a deal is it? That they've been working on this equipment, is this correct? And servicing it satisfactory?
Yes, sir.
How big a deal is it that they don't have these certificates on certain pieces of this equipment? Considering they're significantly lower bid, and they are a Tarrant County company, I don't understand.
And a saving to the taxpayers.
I think that the certification is obtainable. At one time, we heard from men that it was lost in a flood or the dog ate it up. I've heard a couple of different stories in response to that requirement. I don't think it's a technicality, but if the court determines it is, we can certainly go that direction. But I don't think it's. I'm not sure that it's appropriate for a vendor to write our specifications for us. And we had
I agree. But
I'm sorry, sir.
No, but why did this company's been servicing our equipment for a number of years, and all of a sudden this year, this becomes a stumbling block?
It became an issue with the certification because, again, in our minds, and we had several people in that meeting. I thought there was a fair suggestion. They had a valid concern about a previous vendor, a new vendor, that they felt like weren't qualified to service these machines. I think that's a fair observation, and we felt like it was.
These people were qualified.
Sir?
Do you think they're qualified?
Oh, sir, there's no question.
Okay.
I've got to say that, and I say it probably not often enough, I've seen more glitches in bids in the last year and a half I have in my previous tenure in purchasing. We don't like to see that. They're a good company. We have no dispute with what they do.
If we're seeing more glitches in bids, then you know, this seems like if you have to get a certification on each machine versus a general certification for a type of copier, then maybe we're putting roadblocks in front of folks that we shouldn't be putting in there. And even though it may sound like a great idea, if we've got 100 different types or models of machines and you'd have to have a certification for each one of those, then we may be running bidders off that would allow us to get, I hear all too often, you know, I ask people, why don't you bid on county work? Too much red tape. And, you know, they just say it's not worth the hassle of going through all of the hoops. You know, some of those hoops I know we've got to have. And I understand that, but I think we need to be also careful that if we've got somebody who's got a good reputation, to put a roadblock up that potentially either moves them out of even being able to bid or kicks out a bid that, you know, is obviously lower than what the next group is. You know, I've got some concerns about that also, I guess, from that standpoint.
You didn't even get a bid for Minolta from anybody.
Well, this is not this is not an issue that can be determined today. But I think I did mention in the budget process that we're having an increasingly hard time with finding good vendors to service our older machines. We've got several machines that we probably I won't spout, let me change that statement, that we have the ability to not find parts for this year.
Have these people not been servicing those machines?
Oh, they've done an excellent job, yes, sir. That's not the
Then
issue.
what's the
at all.
problem?
I don't get
Well, as I said, some of the companies may no longer certify, and if they don't certify, then, I mean, that's the stuff, I guess, where I'm coming from. Let me ask one other question. We don't pass this today. Tomorrow, one of our copiers breaks down that's not with them, who've already said they're going to extend their contract. What's going to happen on these other copiers?
We'll have a problem. Might I request that we approve everything but these items?
Might I ask that we approve everything that's on the list that is low bid, including this company?
I think I think that's fine. I think that changes our bid award. What you're saying is we're going to award the contracts, including accelerated in there. If they're the low bid, they get the contract.
That's exactly correct.
So whoever is the low bid out of the three companies that are shown here, are there any other companies?
I've got a question for our attorney.
Well, I got a feeling one of the competitors back here has got a question too. I have a feeling that you may be one of the other companies.
Come before him.
Come on down. Do you want to hear his question, or do you want to go ahead and ask stuff?
Yeah,
Go
good
ahead.
morning. My name is Reed Melnick with Neville Business Machines.
I thought you might be one of the ones here, yes.
Okay. Well, I'll share with you a couple things. We've been a vendor of Tarrant County for the last 8 to 10 years, and we've actually taken over different contracts when you had companies that became unauthorized by the manufacturer, and you needed to be able to get parts from the manufacturer, and people who were certified, we took over those contracts for you. I think we've done an excellent job. I don't think there's been any complaints. We've actually come in and we've done a lot of work regarding free service for you as well. When there was issues that other vendors that could not get the parts, that we've come in and stepped in to make sure that the employees had equipment that was working. I think the importance of the manufacturer's certificate is that you have good people that work on the products, plus you get the support of the manufacturer. If you don't have the manufacturer's certificates, you don't get the support of the manufacturer, so the manufacturer doesn't back up those products. The other thing that happens is that if you don't have certificates or you're not authorized by the manufacturer, you really don't know what parts are going into the products. Okay, you can get used parts in there. You can have lots and lots of problems with that particular piece of equipment. And I think Accelerated has just looked at the Minolta side, which we do not service the Minolta. What they're saying is a rejection on their side of that particular piece. So what we would ask is that on the Kyocera and the other pieces that we do service for you on, that you improve those areas, and if there's a concern, especially since the contract ends today, that you look at awarding us our piece of the award.
Had you previously been awarded the Canon and the Kyocera?
The Kyocera, yes, sir. And in the bid, you asked for certificates, and we furnished you the certificates like you asked for. When it came down to the criteria, it didn't matter which one. We felt that if you set up the criteria, that everyone should meet every criteria of the bid. In the last 27 years that I've been doing this, whenever there's been a single criteria that has not been met, the bid has been rejected. Whether it was a minute past the deadline, it's been rejected. So really, from a standpoint, we look at if we can handle all parts of the bid, we bid. If we can't, we can't.
Is that the reason you didn't bid the Minolta?
We didn't bid, right. We couldn't handle the Minolta, and we weren't certified on those, so we didn't bid that. We didn't feel that was something we could do you justice with. We just wanted to give you a great level of service on the things that we could.
Which contracts are you currently the vendor on for us?
On the maintenance contracts for the Kyocera equipment, and also we have the refurbished contract with you as well for all the Kyocera products on the refurbished contract, which is a totally separate contract.
So currently you're not doing Canon,
Correct?
even though you've been picked for this one, and you're not doing the Panasonic.
That's correct.
Jack is Accelerated currently doing Panasonic in Canton? No. Who is?
Panasonic is currently being taken care of by a company called LaserTech Solutions out of Cleburne, Texas. The Cannons are with Wardlaw Imaging based on an RFQ from this last year.
And Rico?
Rico is done by Rico. And another point to make is we have the current contract we have in place, our RFP 2005-067, allows for 4 of the DI model line items as well as all the BizHub, the newer technology. On the State of Texas DIR contract, they also allow for what's called legacy models, or models that are in effect obsolete. That covers the remainder of the DI models. So we're covered under that with Minolta specifically.
Who's doing Sharp right now?
Sharp is Accelerated, I believe. The older EP models, I have a quote that I completed through a local company that does have their certifications.
And as I'm reading this, Accelerated was the only company that had the hub?
Correct.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Reich, or Mr. Collins, or both. Since the certifications were part of the bid specifications, can we now award a bid that did not meet that qualification as stated in the bid specs?
I did have occasion to read these bid specs not too long ago, and they are very specific that this requirement must be included in the response to the request for proposal.
Your advice would be if we want to do something different, then we need to rebid. Is that correct?
That would be what we would have to do, I believe.
Rock and hard place.
We've got contracts in place.
I hear no action being taken today.
Well, do we need to take some action so we can put our purchasing department back to work? Like, we can make a recommendation. I mean, we can vote to reject all bids and rebid.
If you'll add to that, purchasing ask the current vendors to extend month to month.
My concern is that if we have a vendor who is currently serving us under a contract, and then we change the specification that we know is probably going to eliminate that bidder, I have a problem with that. I have a concern and a problem with that.
I've got a problem with that too, but in order to get around that problem, the only way to do it is to rebid and change the specification.
You'll need to come forward, please. Some of us don't hear well.
The previous year, the bid, we were a secondary bidder. The first bidder said they didn't want to do it again at that price, and there is still one more year left on that.
On all these?
It would be the same people doing the same things one more year again. And that's still in place.
Okay.
I'm
Jack?
even more confused.
Well, just a second, I'll ask Jack something.
There was
Thank y'all.
another third year you can extend it, and they didn't choose to do so.
There's a 3-year option.
Okay, why aren't we extending? We do on most contracts, we usually will extend until the last year and then rebid. Why did we choose to rebid this one this year as opposed to extending the contract? And is this less or more than what we had the previous?
I believe it's less, isn't it?
What made us decide to go ahead and rebid that this year versus going ahead and extending the contracts and going for another year?
More to this than...
Because of the points that were made when we were trying to award last year's bid, specifically the certifications.
Was someone eliminated because they did not have certifications from
Besides-
last year's bid?
Well, not
Well,
only
sorry.
that, but like Conica Minolta, for example, they didn't attend the mandatory pre-bid, so they were not allowed to bid. It just so happens we have a DIR contract to fall back on, as well as an existing RFP.
So if we decided today to not take your recommendation, but to extend the contract for an additional year, we can do that.
Yes, sir.
Are we agendized for that action?
Extending this contract.
So we just reject the bid.
Rejecting all bids and starting to come back next week is closer, but not extending this contract.
Your Honor.
We have extend contracts, stuff like that.
So, a couple of alternatives. We can pass. We can extend. We can reject. We can reject. And then if we reject all bids, then we can hope that our current vendors will continue to serve under an existing contract that we actually have the ability to extend, but we just can't extend it today. So then next week, or whenever, purchasing can come back and either, one, recommend that we extend the contract for an additional year, our existing, or that we go out for rebids at this point in time.
Those would be the items for
Next week.
Is either go out.
It's either this week, it's either pass it or reject it.
Your Honor, I would recommend to the court that you not reject it, but that you simply pass it, because that'll give us another week to look at this thing. If you intend to, we'll agendize it properly next week so that you can have the option to reject at that time and award an extension of this or do any other type of actions.
By not rejecting it, we don't lose these bids if we hold on to it.
Because if you reject the bids now, then you can't come back and approve the bids next week.
Thank you very much.
And I hope nobody's copier breaks between now and next Tuesday.
Well, I guess my hope would be that if somebody's copier does break, that the vendor come out and service it, or that vendor not plan on rebidding in the future.
That's the way to go.
I like the way you think.
Number 7.
Number 7, bid award recommendation for bid number 2008-202, bid for the purchase of voting booths for Elections Administration. Recommendation will be to award to Election Works Incorporated, amount of $198,600.
Now, these voting booths hold what?
Several people.
At the same time?
Yeah, sure.
Is this just a platform for a voting machine?
Mr. Rayburn is here to answer that question.
What are we buying here?
These are little boxes.
These are standalone voting booths that voters use at the polling place on Election Day to vote a paper ballot.
A little folder.
We're just trying to expand our capacity for Election Day.
Okay. This is not a new voting system. It's not a new machine.
No, sir.
It's a piece of furniture.
Exactly.
Thank you. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Last item, number 8, is an item in regards to bid number 2008-197 for replacement of boilers at the Correction Center. We're asking to, recommending to reject all bids and seeking permission to rebid.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes. Wait a minute. Gary, are you voting or is your light out?
I'm sorry. It's out.
It's unanimous, and I think it was the previous time, too.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Don't you have, is there some reason why we didn't do number 9?
About the maps goes?
Got you rattled here, don't we? Got my hat out.
Item in regards to bid number 2008-193, it's our annual contract for MAPSCO Street Guides and Directories. Again, we're seeking to reject all bids and seeking permission to rebid.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
What's the justification for that?
They bid on 2008 versus 2009's.
Okay.
Good reason.
Any other questions? Yeah, I would not have wanted another copy of 2008. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Wait a minute.
Remember, I was kind last year. I was kind. I'm here today to request that Commissioners Court approve a memorandum of understanding with the Texas Department of Transportation for the construction of turn lanes on Business 287 at 3 locations, Tinsley Road, Peden Road, and Old Decatur Road. The Texas Department of Transportation will install signals at these 3 intersections after the turn lanes are in place.
And the money that we're paying out comes out of my discretionary fund?
Yes, sir.
From the bond issue. Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
My second item today is a request that Commissioners Court approve a resolution and order authorizing conveyance of right-of-way easement containing 1,001 square feet across Lot 1R, Block 1, McElroy Industrial Edition, and 654 square feet across Lot 1R, Block 1 of the Detention Center Complex. The conveyance is to the City of Fort Worth. We also ask that the court authorize payment for surveys and property descriptions and authorize facilities management to remove and construct a new fence along the easement property line on county property. That's a long way of asking that the court convey an easement to the City of Fort Worth so that we can construct a sidewalk from Sylvania to Premier for the elections, people that vote at elections. They can go from the bus stop to elections on a sidewalk now instead of walking in the street.
Move approval.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, looks like you have a few interlocal agreements on here.
I have several of them, Your Honor. Item M1A through J. I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. While we're at this particular point, I want to again recognize our Emergency Services Director and her assistant, Melissa and Bill, for the job they've done. And I'd like for Melissa to come forward and talk a little bit about kind of where we are as far as the special needs and kind of what's happened from Gustav and Ike. And again, want to thank both Bill and her for the work they've done.
Speaking to the mic.
I figured you out, so you might as well get it. There it is.
What was the giveaway?
Well, that wink you just did. I thought it was time to fill up my coffee, and then I figured you were going to do this to me. All right. We had about 2,000 people with Hurricane Ike, which was only a week following Gustav. We transported most of those people back in 35 buses. We still have some people located in our...
She's done pretty good there.
It's better.
Sorry.
You're doing pretty good.
My dad, he just likes to fuss all the time.
Got her off mark here.
35 buses we loaded, and we took back to regional hubs down in the Houston-Beaumont area, so that they could shelter locally and provide those social services that are needed, and also so they could get those assessments done on their homes. We do have a number of people still located in local hotels that are probably from the Galveston area that currently don't have anywhere to go because the doors haven't opened back to them, and some of them may not have anywhere to go. So we're trying to get them hooked in with social services here and VOAD with Catholic Charities for the long-term recovery. Speaking of long-term recovery, we were in the middle of planning for a long-term recovery group consisting of Tarrant County, Fort Worth, and Arlington in the event that we had to keep some of the people here for quite a bit longer. So we're going to continue with planning for that group and have them meet on a quarterly basis so that we can get some plans in place prior to the next event. We did have a good number of plans in place due to Katrina and Rita, as you know. But I think finally the girls are going to move forward, and we're going to move on to planning in the wake of the boys. So from now on, you'll probably, instead of hearing what we did in Katrina, you're going to hear what we did in Ike. We
are in the middle of applying for assistance with FEMA. With the disaster declaration that we did has been submitted to the state. There have been 2 disaster declarations for both of the hurricanes in which we're involved in what they call a sheltering capacity, which doesn't get us fully encompassed in the overall national disaster declaration, but it gets us involved in the sheltering declaration. With that sheltering declaration, FEMA would cover 75% and the state would cover 25% as they requested us to do the sheltering. And I'm going to take just a minute to talk about one thing we have coming up next week. We had a lot of continuing education in the last year for our department heads and elected officials, which has helped quite a bit in the decision-making process for this event. Next week, on October the 8th, we're going to have a senior officials workshop that we as Tarrant County are hosting at the Public Health Building from 9 until 3, which will have mayors, city managers. Judge, you're scheduled to be there, as well as Mr. Manius, so that we can get some additional learning in place for these decision makers as to what their role in disaster management and declarations will be.
Any questions? Again, thank you all very much for the work I know that y'all did on that, and we're doing some wrap-up meetings, I guess, Thursday of this week.
Oh, yeah. We will have an after-action report for internal processes on Thursday, an additional after-action report on Friday afternoon for external processes for those cities that we coordinated, in addition to the other counties. And on the 10th of October at the COG, they're going to host a region-wide after-action report that's going to be facilitated by TEACS, recorded by the state, so that we can get some of those lessons learned back in a publication.
Thank you. Any appointments today? Okay, you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Your Honor, we have several items to bring to you this morning in briefing, actually 4 of them. The first one deals with the monthly update from the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Manius. The first item that I had that I wanted to discuss with you was our contracts with our copiers, but I'm going to forego that for the moment. And
where'd you go to college?
My hat's not up there. I went to UNT. Thank you.
Well, I was going to mention that my oldest daughter started out at UNT and is still at UNT, and they haven't beaten anybody. I mean, you guys need to, y'all really need to work out a method to see if Mississippi State and Arkansas can't play UNT for kind of the beginning of the year.
When I attended...
No, you're not recognized to speak again, Mr. Patterson.
When I attended the University of North Texas, we played Nebraska, and Nebraska beat us 72-0, and Nebraska petitioned to play their next 4 games at UNT, but the NCAAs would not allow it.
I want to hear about copiers. I can hear in my office. So.
I know you can. I know you can. That's why I made the comment. But this is our effort to, after the board meetings, is to come and present some information to y'all and have dialogue with y'all about some of the things that are happening at JPS, and also to receive comments from y'all. If you so have them, I'll make myself available each month. And I want to give you 4 very quick updates. And the first one I'd like to do is acknowledge the efforts of the University of North Texas Health Science Center. I know that you're aware that we agreed on professional service agreements with them, 4 of them, in fact. Thank you. We did that in a great effort, and that's a great effort by the University of North Texas Health Science Center as well. Dr. Forbes and the team leaders over there need great accolades, because that process worked very well, and I'm very pleased.
And all of that worked, and I didn't receive a phone call.
No, sir. We can, I think, on the best interest of this community and healthcare delivery, those 2 institutions should always work together and always understand their roles.
What a refreshing attitude.
Well, I think it's the right attitude to have for 2 leading institutions that provide healthcare. Second thing is, I wanted to give you a very brief update to tell you that at our board meeting on October 16th, we'll have a briefing on our emergency room. We are not at a level of crisis in our emergency room. However, I want to make sure we always are avoiding one. We get 72,000 patients a year through our emergency room. Our emergency room is going to tell you about the health of our network. It's going to tell you about our admissions, our discharges, our consults, our left without being seen rates, and I think we always have to look at our emergency room. I spent 12 and a half hours a couple of weeks ago in our emergency room, and I was incredibly impressed with our doctors, our nurses, and our technicians. I think we need to look at some staffing issues, and I think we need to look at a few things. So we'll have a presentation regarding our emergency department. We've got to do our due diligence and be vigilant about our emergency room, and that will be coming up at the board meeting. Also, we have a team in place right now from the College of Emergency Surgeons. We are applying to have a residency program for emergency medicine and create a residency program. There's only 6 residency programs in the state of Texas, 3 of which are military. Tarrant County obviously does not have a training facility at all for emergency medicine doctors. Texas ranks 44th amongst the other states for board-certified emergency medical care providers, and that's not where we want to be. So again, JPS should step up to the plate and provide those type of services to this community. The last thing I wanted to compliment you all on, you took an effort some time ago to create video streaming for your board meetings. It is my hope that JPS will follow suit with that. I think Tarrant County Hospital District is too large of an entity not to be seen by as many people as possible. Not everybody can attend our board meetings, so we are going to make efforts to sort of piggyback on y'all's efforts with the companies that you use and the efforts that you use for video streaming. Our technical folks have been down here on numerous occasions. Mr. Manius and his team have helped out. Mr. Montgomery has asked for a camera to only be on him, and we said we would not do that, that it would be on everybody. That is my update, Judge and Commissioners, and if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to receive them.
Any questions, any comments?
No, I just want to thank you for what you're doing in the emergency room, and last week I just made an appointment that I hope will help in that process, because the gentleman I nominated spent many years in that emergency room.
And I too want to thank you and the other commissioners and the judge for making that appointment. Our appointments now are full with the board, and allowing Dr. Weber, who provided 30 years of incredible service to that facility, to now be part of the board, I think is a great acquisition, because he understands healthcare delivery and he cares very much about it. I think it will be a great asset.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Robert.
Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you very much.
Your Honor, we go to item B. This concerns an update from the Elections Administration Department as it relates to the November 2008 general election. Mr. Rayburn.
Good morning. Judge, I was hoping you could put that LSU cap back up there for me.
Be glad to do that.
Well, I have a few opening
So I've got
remarks.
a fellow LSU Tiger.
Thank you. Just wanted to make a few opening remarks and give you an update on several areas of preparation that we've been working on very diligently over the last several months. I want to give kudos to my staff. I have an excellent staff, and they've been working very hard, many long hours, and many yet to go to prepare for this election. And we're doing everything we can to conduct a smooth election that flies under the radar, if you will. We don't anticipate any problems, and we're doing everything that we can to avoid any problems. We are preparing for a very heavy turnout in this election. Our presidential turnouts in the last few years have been, I guess we could say, mediocre, 55 to 65%. But if you go back to 1992, Tarrant County had a 79% turnout in the presidential election, and we're preparing for that kind of a turnout again, maybe even higher. And so we're doing everything we can. Today, we're at 939,000 registered voters, and that's the highest number of registered voters we've ever had in Tarrant County, and that's about 40,000 new voters over what we had in the primary election back in March. We're receiving about 2,500 applications every day, at least for the last few days. That's been our volume of applications, and so I think that by the time all the dust settles, we'll probably have around 960,000 registered voters for the election. We will have 388 Election Day polling places on November 4th, and that's an increase of about 40 over our 2006 general election. We'll have 46 early voting sites, and we will field some 3,000 plus poll workers on Election Day. So far, we have mailed around 17,000 ballots out to people who've requested ballots for this election, and I would say that that's a lot, considering that in the last presidential election, we only had a total of 16,500 mail ballots voted. I don't have the number mailed out for that election, but that's the total we got back in 2004. So we're already past the number that we got back in that election. Our all-time record, at least since 1982, is 23,000 voted ballots by mail. So I think we'll easily surpass that in this election. We've been doing a number of things to prepare. Like I said, we've met with Rick Brunson and his staff and AT&T and Drake Communications at least 4 times. We have one more meeting to go to plan for our phone needs through November the 4th. We're adding incoming telephone lines, personnel to take telephone calls, and we will have a new automated system on Election Day for our election judges to call in to look up a voter who's not on their list. We've always had a dedicated number for those election judges, but in this election they will get the automated system first. We're hoping that will take care of about 70% of those calls from the election judges. If the automated system can't help them, then they'll be transferred into a live operator, and we're hoping that's going to cut down the waiting times to reach a live person. We've been working very closely with the IT department, website issues, other things. Our website, that they have moved my understanding is they've moved our web pages to a separate web server, which is to accommodate a higher number of web users on Election Day and prior to Election Day. On Election Day, the IT department will put up what they're calling a light web page for users that come into the tarrantcounty.com address, and you know, right now the county's homepage has got a lot of graphics, and depending on your type of internet connection may take a while to load. Well, of course, we're expecting a record number of web users on Election Day, so they're going to put up a light page, and it just will ask them, do you want to find your polling place? Do you want to view election results on election night, or do you want to go to the regular county homepage? And they're anticipating that that's going to help the web traffic quite a bit. They've been working very hard to streamline the operation of our online voter lookup system. We have a thing on the website, an application where a user can go to enter a name to look up the status of their registration, and it will also tell them their polling place. The IT department has been working to streamline the operations on that to make it a faster response time. IT is also loaning us some employees on election morning to help us answer telephone calls from polling places regarding technical issues. Sometimes election workers have trouble getting their equipment going, and so we're trying to beef up the number of people that can answer telephone calls on Election Day, including the technical phone bank, and IT is going to loan us some employees on election morning to take those calls. In the area of personnel, we're increasing our temporary employees through Election Day to accommodate phone calls that we're already getting and that we will be getting before Election Day. They're also being used for data entry for voter registration applications, and of course the volume of mail ballot processing. As I said, that volume's been much heavier than normal. We've increased the number of clerks at our Election Day polling places. I was here, I believe, last week, and you all approved the number of clerks at the polling places. We've added training classes to accommodate a higher number of workers, so we'll have more training classes this election than we normally do. We're in pretty good shape with the number of people to work out at the polling places on Election Day. We have a database of 6,400 names. We sent letters to all those potential workers about a month ago, and we've received responses from 2,500 people willing to work on Election Day, and so we think that we're in very good shape there. We do have a small need for additional Spanish-speaking workers at our polling places, and we are working very closely on that. We'll be issuing a press release on that later this week, trying to get past the final hurdle on that. We will also have emergency teams on standby. Oftentimes, we lose workers in the last day or two before Election Day, sometimes election morning. So we will have some emergency teams and additional clerks on standby at our office for rapid deployment on election morning if that becomes necessary. As far as our early voting preparations go, I mentioned the mail ballot situation already. We have supplies on hand to accommodate up to 50,000 by-mail voters. We're monitoring our supplies very closely, and we know what the lead time is to order additional envelopes and supplies. So we will be ordering more in the next few weeks if we need to. We've been working with all of our early voting sites in the county, especially the ones that had the heaviest turnout back in the primary election, to make sure that they are giving us their largest space available and that we have enough equipment that we can maximize the site with as much equipment as we can provide because we are anticipating a heavy early voting turnout. In the last presidential election, I believe almost 55% of the people who voted in Tarrant County voted during the early voting process. So we're very concerned and making sure that we've got all of our preparations done in that area. So we've worked with the sites to make sure they can put us in the largest area. We've added a few early voting sites to try to relieve congestion from some of our heaviest sites out there. Also, we moved some of our early voting sites out of school buildings, which caused us some problems in previous elections, so that we'll have more room to better accommodate voters in those areas. Our Election Day preparations, we've analyzed the feedback that we've received from prior elections, including the primary, and we've added some polling places in areas to relieve some overcrowding at a few polling places that did have problems back in the primary with crowds. We've been working again with the polling places to make sure that we are in the largest space possible. We've been trying to work especially close with all of our school districts to see if we can be in gymnasiums or cafeterias on Election Day, and most of them have been very good about working with us to secure a large voting area at their facilities. I was here a few weeks ago, and the court approved a combination plan for polling places that house multiple precincts. We had problems in some of our previous general elections where we would have 3 separate precincts, for example, at a polling place, and each one had a different area inside the building, and that causes a lot of confusion because many voters don't know what their precinct number is. They don't know, and when they're all at the same location, they don't know what line to get in. This way, every voter gets in one line, and the judges at those locations are encouraged to break up their book by alphabet. So voters with that last name A through L may go to one side of the room and M through Z to another side of the room. We think that will help us a lot of problems, eliminate some problems there. We've ordered a lot of Election Day ballots, probably way more than we need in the vast majority of our precincts, but we have to put in our order so early. We can't wait for early voting to be completed to make a determination on which precincts are voting early and which aren't. We've ordered
talking about Election Day paper ballots.
Yes, sir, exactly, paper ballots. We've ordered 850,000 paper ballots for Election Day, which is about a 90% registration rate. But again, we don't know, some precincts may not turn out heavy for early voting, and we just can't afford the bad publicity we would get for running out of ballots at any Election Day site.
Well, I'm aware of several community organizations that are advising people to ask for paper ballots on Election Day.
Well,
so
and
you need to have an ample supply.
Yes, sir, and the vast majority of our voters on Election Day do vote paper ballots because we typically have only one electronic device at a polling place, and so generally more than 90% of our Election Day voters will vote on paper, and I suspect in this election it will be even higher than that 90% mark. And that's one of the reasons that we were ordering the additional voting booths action you approved earlier on the bid to increase our voting booths by 1,000, and that's based on some previous feedback that we've had from some of our election judges. We will be posting signs on Election Day at polling places that are no longer in use. Every election we have some churches and private buildings that don't allow us to come back. We wear out our welcome sometimes, and so we will be posting signs at those locations and driving directions to help the voter find their new polling place. Also,
Do you have any idea how many of those there are, Steve?
I don't have an exact number here. I know that's really one of my biggest concerns about Election Day is voters needing to do their homework to find out where their polling place is. Like I said, in every election we have polling places that change. We have the additional problem this time in that we had such a heavy turnout in the primary election, and the parties don't always open all of the county precincts, that we don't have enough equipment to give each one of them equipment to open up every voting place. So we will have a lot of voters, I'm sure, who will go back to the polling place where they voted in the primary, expecting that to be their polling place on November 4th. And so that's going to be our message to the media over the next several weeks. Please either vote early or make sure you check to find out where your Election Day polling place is. Also, for Election Day preparation, we have removed our rally stations, our drop-off points where election judges take their supplies on election night and returns. Some of those places were at Election Day polling places, and one of the things that we found in some recent elections is maybe the voting at that place was not completed yet, but election judges from other precincts were arriving to drop off supplies, and that created some traffic flow problems there. So we are moving our rally station facilities to places that are not Election Day polling places to help in that regard. We're also adding one additional rally station drop-off point for election night. That's really the sum of my comments as far as our preparations, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have about the election.
In 1992, there was a huge turnout, and there were portable voting stations brought out. Do you have that capability?
We do. Now, are you referring to Election Day or early voting?
No, I'm referring to Election Day.
We do have some, we call them.
They look like hot dogs.
Well, that's you took the words right out of my mouth. We refer to them as hot dog carts, and we have several of those that we can deploy. We have those on standby election morning in the event that someone can't get into a facility. A polling place is locked, and the person who's supposed to show up with the key doesn't get there in time. And we've had that happen before. And so we've got those hot dog carts, if you will, ready to go, and we can open up a temporary polling place in the morning, and then we can use those as kind of rapid response in the evening if we have some very long lines. We've only got 3 of those, I believe,
we had all
total.
3 of them out in Arlington.
Okay.
What do you do? Historically, we always have, it seems like, a couple of polling places where whoever's supposed to turn in the deal decides they're going to go to have dinner, or they will turn it in the morning. What are we doing, again, to try to convince these folks that as soon as they get their counts done, they bring it to the central place?
We do address that in the literature that's mailed to the election judge, and we also address it in our training, that they're not to go to a restaurant, that they're supposed to finish up at the polling place and come directly to the drop-off point. So we do address that in our training.
When does the clock stop on them? When do we quit paying them? When they turn them in?
Yes, sir. When they arrive, no, the clock stops when they leave the polling place, because we pay an additional $25 flat fee for the return of the supplies to us on election night. So their instructions are to sign out on the timesheet when they leave the polling place.
Steve, we've got a number of voter registration drives going on throughout the county, and they will continue to register new voters until the final minute. What provision is going to be made for those new voters who have recently registered and don't receive their voter registration cards by Election Day?
Well,
what happens with them?
As long as we receive their application by the deadline, they are registered to vote. If for some reason a voter doesn't receive their certificate, they can bring some other kind of identification with them to the polling place, and there's a whole laundry list of acceptable identification other than the voter certificate, and they can use any one of those things.
One piece of identification?
Yes, sir. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a photo ID either. There's a number of things, mail from a governmental office, utility bill. There's a number of things that can be used.
You mentioned that for early voting, we are not using schools anymore.
We are using
We're
one
using
school,
one.
yes, in Grand Prairie.
But that same situation is not an election day deal. We're in the schools we have been in before, we intend to be in again.
For the most case, in most cases, that's true. There are a few schools that we have left at the request of some of the school districts, but that's very few. We're still using very many school buildings on Election Day. We had a meeting with every school district back in the summer. We asked them all to come to our office, and we had a big meeting to talk about the issues of using schools on Election Day, especially the asking to use the largest facilities, and also there have been issues recently about the school districts, of course, are very careful about who comes onto their campuses during the day. I know at the school my son attends, I have to sign into the office before I can go into the school building. And so in most cases, the schools are trying to put us right up front or in the cafeteria or in a gym that has a separate entrance. And so we don't anticipate any issues for our voters having to pass an ID hurdle to get into the building. All the school districts have assured us that we won't face that anywhere.
In terms of advising people about finding out their polling places early and various other things that they need to do to be prepared for Election Day, have you considered working with our public information officer and perhaps our graphic artist to come up with a campaign that can be posted around the county and do some PSAs and that sort of thing?
I think we certainly can do that. We do have a flyer, I think, that we provided to each of you. It's got a big vote logo on the top. We've distributed that around a number of places, and it's got three main messages on there: register to vote before October 6th, vote early, or if you wait till Election Day, be sure you know where your polling place is. And it tells the voter how to find out that information either from our website or by calling our office. But I can definitely work with the people that you've suggested to see what we can do.
I would suggest that you do that.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
I want to thank Steve for this presentation. I thought it was important that the elections office come up and assure the voting public that we're ready for this election, that we're not going to have any oopses on Election Day, and that they can feel confident that when they come and cast their vote, that it will be registered properly.
Well, and I thank you for this opportunity to bring a lot of this before the public. I am heartened by a number of surveys that have been conducted over the last several years that I've seen, and voter confidence. We hear so many negative things, especially after the 2000 election in Florida, but the surveys that I have seen, and these are university studies over the last several years, show voter confidence somewhere between 82 and 89%, and I think that's very good. And of course, we're doing everything we can to raise that even higher.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rayburn. Members of the court, we can go to item C. This concerns a briefing by Juvenile Services. This briefing concerns state and federal reimbursement issues, and on this particular item, we may ask you to take action at the end of the presentation. Mr. Turner is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manus. Good morning. It's always good to be here. What I wanted to share with you, last week we received some information, we being the Juvenile Department, that based on some work that we've actually been engaged in for about the past 8 or 9 months. I'd like to just bring you up to date just real quickly. We have basically learned that our Title IV federal funding, because of new regulations that have been worked out between the federal government, the state, and particularly for probation departments, but also has impact on the Child Protective Services system, have been developed. that's going to create certainly some loss of revenue through our federal 4E process. Just so everyone knows, the federal program, or 4E, is actually a federal program which assists the states with the cost of care for children who qualify for financial assistance through the Aid to Families with Dependent Children program, and of course they have to meet specific eligibility requirements. Bottom line is it provides services to at-risk kids in those families, and they're one of the few programs that is very specifically targeted to that population. We have been in Tarrant County involved in this process for approximately 10 years. TJPC, the Texas Juvenile Probation Commission, is the agency that we work with at the juvenile probation departments across the state, and we coordinate collection efforts for all the departments through TJPC, and they in turn work with the Texas Department of Protective and Regulatory Services, who is actually the recipient of the federal 4E funds. Historically, Tarrant County Juvenile Services has received, at one time, was receiving as much as $3 million annually, but with an average of about $650 a quarter, which is about $2.6 million annually. There are several things that have impacted the 4E funding issue. The state basically volunteered to do a pilot review during the summer and fall of 2007. As again, I want to highlight that was a voluntary process that the state engaged in. They wanted to help develop some monitoring tools to make sure that the system was working the way it was intended to be. This is some activity that's going on actually nationally. Several other states have been involved in the same process, but what we have been told is what they have learned in the state of Texas will probably be the national model for implementation of this process for juvenile probation departments across the country. What has happened is that once the review was done and was completed, the claims were actually stopped for the part of the process for the review back in January of this year. So basically, we were told that we were not to file any claims for the second and third quarter of FY08. But since that time, we have developed a whole new review process. We being the chief probation officers from across the state, have worked very closely with TJPC. I actually went down and met with 2 or 3 other chiefs and met with the administrative staff with Texas Department of I can't even keep them straight, Family Services, Children and Family Protective Services, and met with them personally about this issue. And of course, we believe it's unfair to penalize us as a state because we entered into the review process on a volunteer basis, told them to come on in, we will work with the issues and get that taken care of. And of course, that was necessarily our agency, that was the Juvenile Probation Commission and Child Protective Services in their process. So that all took place over the course of the summer and fall of 2007. Again, we were told to stop all of our claims effective January 2008. The new system was developed, and then we were told we could begin our claims again the fourth quarter of this year, which is basically ending at the end of September. We will not know actually what our claims will look like with the new process and the new procedures until we actually are able to finalize this new process. Well, we projected the best case scenario that we were given back earlier this year was about a 15% to 20% reduction in what we have historically received. The worst case scenario was 50%, and the more we've heard over the past few months, we made all of our projections for our budget for FY09 based on a 50% reduction, or approximately $300,000 a quarter. So we were trying to be as conservative as we could, because not really knowing where we were going as this continued to roll out. We took some steps in 2008 to reduce our expenditures with our 4E cost. I presented all this to our juvenile board back during the budget process that we just completed. We reduced some of our contract provider contracts just simply because we just needed to, and our referral rate had not actually increased drastically like we had thought it might have. We didn't fill some vacant positions during the course of the year to try to keep our costs down. And then because of some additional state funding we received, we were able to reduce some of our costs within our 4E funds. We transferred, thanks to our work with the budget office and to this body, we actually transferred 4 positions off of our 4E funding to county funding that have to do with our mental health services and providing services for our sex offender treatment. So that has certainly helped us. We again reduced some contracts for those funds, and so those things have already been addressed and dealt with. Excuse me. The issue today that I'm standing really in front of you about is this whole issue about the claims that ceased in January of 2008. We are very firm, we believe very firmly, as does the Texas Juvenile Probation Commission, that we should be able to go back and claim the second and third, or submit our second and third claims, quarter claims, and have those actually paid. We budgeted those dollars for expenses for this year, and so when we were told without any pre-warning that we just simply had to stop those claims, that that is not a fair practice at the very least, and we should be able to continue to claim those. As I mentioned before, we actually met personally with DFPS. We have met again ongoing with TJPC. They have communicated with us regularly by email and by phone about what is going on and what's been developed over this period of time. We have already, and what we're proposing is that we have actually collected data for the first two or the second and third periods, the first, second, and third quarters. We collected the necessary data, and we are proposing that we use the new procedures that are required to actually make those claims. So we feel like we have a good plan in place to make that work. We've also been working with the company that we work with that helps us with these claims, and they've been very proactive with us in getting this issue addressed. We have been told that the decision will be made in the next 2 weeks. The agency that's going to make that decision at the federal level is called the Children's Bureau, which is a part of the Administration for Children and Families. There was a letter writing campaign that was initiated last week. I have already written letters to both the Children's Bureau and 2 of our delegates at the federal level to ask their support and help in recuperating and at least a positive response in accepting those second and third claims. And again, for us, we're projecting that it would be a loss of about $600,000 for our agency and for the services that we provide. As GK mentioned, as I said, I have already written a letter. If this board would like to do the same thing, I would certainly support that and appreciate your support in that process. Again, we believe it's appropriate for us to receive those funds. We planned on it. We were surprised by it, and at that point, I'll just ask for any questions or anything else you'd like to know about.
Is there any problem with, and we might need to take action during?
And in fact, we're going to ask that you do take action. We did pass around a sample letter that Mr. Turner drafted for us, and if the court would so deem appropriate, if you would pass an order which would authorize the sending of that letter to all of the U.S. congressional delegation for Tarrant County, which includes both Senate and House of Representatives.
And second, and this letter is to be signed by the county judge?
Yes.
I'd like to include that as a part of the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Several stacks of stuff back there, I understand, to sign today. Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
As always, thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. Your Honor, members of the court, we have one additional presentation that deals with the bond program and the transportation portion of that. That presentation is probably going to be, would you say, 20 minutes long? 10, 15 minutes?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes long?
We're going to take a little break.
Yes.
Put that on hold.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Today I'll give you an update on the 2006 Transportation Bond Program, and I will be brief with my remarks. We have, let me first let you know, as my usual disclaimer, that the information that you'll be seeing today is a snapshot of the program as it stands right now. Obviously, project schedules change, our disbursements will sometimes change, and so, but the information you'll see today is as it stands this week. To date, we have executed 18 interlocal agreements. You can see the value of those projects. The county's participation is approximately 40% of those. We have executed 2 local project advance funding agreements with TxDOT. Again, our county participation is $8 million for those two. Those 2 projects are the FM 156 realignment and the East Rosedale project. And then we have executed interlocal agreements for 5 projects that will be using discretionary dollars. You've seen this information before. Not anything's changed here. This is the breakdown of our funding after the second-tier projects were accepted by court quite some time ago. To give you an idea of how our funding is being programmed, this obviously is the slide that will change quite a bit as we move along. Right now, we're showing that the years with the highest program funding would be in 2010, 2011. The $8 million that you see in 2007 reflects the discretionary funding that was allocated to each precinct at that time, and so you just see how that funding is allocated across the years. This is driven a lot by the schedules of the projects. Last time that I spoke with you, we had one project that was completed, and that was the Gateway Boulevard extension. I'm pleased to let you know today that we have 2 more projects that have been completed. Actually, they're in the process of being finalized. They're open to traffic right now, and that is the Bogart Drive project in Colleyville and the Starnes Road project in Watauga. We'll take a look at those in I've got some photos of those projects we'll take a look at in just a moment. This list is obviously growing. We have quite a number of projects that are under agreement, as I mentioned earlier. I won't go through each one of these, but I do want to point out that, for instance, on this slide, we've got Pleasant Ridge and Randall Mill Road. Those 2 projects, from my understanding, are going to construction right now. And so we're definitely making progress on these projects. This is the next slide. Everman, Precinct 1 is working on the Wichita Street extension, and that should be completed in October. This is the remainder of those projects. And just keep in mind, in the list that you see here, you'll see Bogart and Starnes included because they're technically still under agreement as of today.
And Randy, the bond program investment, is that the total amount, or is that just our share?
That's just our share.
Okay.
Regarding the commissioner discretionary projects, I mentioned earlier there are 5. These are the 5 projects that have been approved by the interlocal agreements have been approved by a court. Again, the Wichita Street extension, which will be completed next month. And Pennsylvania Avenue is another project that I believe looks like that'll be completed in March. So we're coming up on those completion dates.
And we did add an extra one today in Precinct 4 on this particular one.
Yes.
Pennsylvania Avenue, that obviously is in Arlington?
It's in Kennedale.
Kennedale. We have been in discussion with some of you with regard to potential discretionary projects coming up. These are just reflect the ones that have come through court. We have noticed, we spoke last time about the fact that some projects are delayed. The next 2 or 3 slides will indicate for you those where we stand on that. We've broken the projects down, the ones that have been delayed, we've broken them down into 3 categories: 3 years or more, delays of 1 to 3 years, and delays of up to 1 year. But what we wanted to do, you can see the number of projects that are in each category, but we wanted to take a closer look at the number of projects that, yes, they may be delayed, but are they progressing in some phase of the project? Either it's in design, right-of-way, utility adjustments, or construction.
So this goes back to Commissioner Fickus's question with regards to, are these people still planning to do these roads? And what we're saying is, and what I think you're fixing to show us is that, yes, they are. It just may be a little bit delayed from
Yes,
what they originally said.
and you're going to see this pattern here on this slide, which makes sense. In the second category, projects that are delayed 1 to 3 years, there are 31 of those, but we have 22 of them that are already in some phase of progress, either in design or right-of-way acquisition. Some are actually in construction. And then the third category, projects that are delayed up to 1 year, they may only be delayed 2 months, 6 months, but all 5 of those projects are moving forward. In fact, I think probably 2 or 3 of those are in construction right now. So we are seeing progress. And to show you more specifically where each project stands.
I read that.
I mean, it's a little difficult to read. By the way, if you are having trouble reading that, I have the printed version.
If you're not having trouble reading that, then
I do have
you're
a printed
obviously
version.
too young to be working around here.
Well, I'm getting there.
Wait a minute, I can read that.
No, you can't.
Most certainly can.
It's hard to read.
Well, I have paper copies that I can
I have
provide.
it right here, and it's hard to read.
Okay. Well, I can answer any questions that you
Do
have.
you have paper copies?
Wait a minute, come
I
on
do.
with the paper copies first.
Easier to read. Let me have those. At least the ones you can't see.
Oh.
Who needs a copy?
Well, I can enlarge it on the computer version of the. I can read it.
I can read it too.
Well, excuse me.
We went ahead and tried to
See if Jerry wants to
Here.
copy.
fit that into
You
the
guys
slides.
want a copy?
I'll take one. There's one for JJ.
They used to
Now-
call these trifocals, now they're progressive lenses.
Progressive lenses.
Well, that's because you're so progressive.
Okay, so these are still in the order that they were in when we originally.
Yes, I just simply took the list and identified the status of the project in terms of the schedule.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to your little, go back,
Yeah, go back to that color
The
code.
color code.
color coding for
That
So
one.
red
3
is
years.
3 years.
3 years or
Beige.
more, yes.
Do we have any blue ones?
I don't see any beige. That beige supposed to be yellow?
It's a yellow,
Down there.
1 to 3 is yellow.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, combined in Davis.
I guess that's yellow.
Pleasant.
So if I'm reading this correctly, then, let's just go up to the first on-system projects. Those that are white, original completion date, county. Let's just take the first one, farm to market 1187. We were going to put in $2,250,000.
Yes.
Was that discretionary?
No, this was part of the on-system approved funding from the Project Evaluation Committee. Those projects were,
Who submitted it, though?
now, those are 2 projects that were provided by the Texas Department of Transportation.
I thought we did this if cities put it in there. Did I miss something here?
At the time, we had also discussed and had requested from TxDOT projects that TxDOT wished to move forward with as part of this program. And they were included in the on-system list that was approved by the Project Evaluation Committee.
Okay.
On some of these,
There was some point at which we discovered that there was some leverage to be
Right.
had, and we included some additional
I
on-system.
remember that.
Are those in the county, or is that, the reason I asked that is I knew that that was the case, but I thought that in those instances, if the project was within a city, that the city was going to pay half of the 10%, and we were going to pay half of the 10%, and that we would leverage it that way, but that if the road was still in the city, that the city was still going to be paying some of the money.
I don't think this FM 1187 from 35 to Oak Grove Road I think that's county.
Yes.
I don't
So it's unincorporated area?
Yeah, that's unincorporated, yeah.
That one is.
That one is.
And many, you're right, Judge, that many of these projects were submitted by the cities, even though we asked for projects that were off-system. We still got several submissions that were on-system, on the TxDOT system, and the project selection committee elected to go ahead and include those. They thought they were viable projects important to this process, and so they did include those, and they've been in the list since.
And in those instances, the cities would pay half of the match?
Typically. Like Randy said, 1187 was actually submitted by TxDOT.
Okay.
And there's federal funding of $4.5 million in that project. It doesn't show up the spreadsheet you've got, but the feds are putting in $4.5 million. We're putting in the $2.25.
So now going down to the local thoroughfare projects, second page, fourth one down, Grapevine, Bass Pro, State Highway 26, 121, State Highway 121. That's a white. Does that mean that project's been dropped?
We've actually had a few of these projects where we had some trouble identifying when the original schedule was the identification of the original schedule that was submitted to us. So we did not put in a schedule on the spreadsheet for those projects. I think there was only maybe two projects that applied to, maybe three.
Well, this other one, let's go down to Grand Prairie, Lynn Creek Parkway. It's showing January 11. You don't have that highlighted or anything along that line. Is that original date?
Yes. In that case, the project was in fact, in that case, I believe that was a project that may even have moved up a month or two.
So as I'm reading this then, the question you raised is whether or not some of these projects are still going. What we're hearing is there's none of the cities have not proposed abandoning any of these projects, even if the costs have gone up to them, with our money still there at what we were projecting.
That's correct. The only withdrawals of projects that we've seen are projects where TxDOT has decided their signalization or intersection improvements where TxDOT decided to come in and pay the entire amount. And I think that applied to one or two projects that were withdrawn for that reason, but not for the reasons that related to financial constraints. Now, there have been projects that have been delayed in some cases due to financial constraints, but have not been withdrawn.
Okay.
I mentioned to you earlier that we had some completed projects, and I'll show you what those look like. This is the Bogart Drive project in Colleyville. As you can see, originally it was a two-lane rural section road that went by a rather busy middle school. After the improvements, you can see that the road is now 2 lanes with a center turn lane, and what you can't see in this picture on the right at the end is the roundabout that was constructed at the location of the school, which has significantly is helping the traffic congestion at that location.
Well, if we actually have one finished, we need to see a picture of one that's actually working, because it's still all conceptual.
We can get that
We can get that for you.
Yeah, because we've got, that one's completed. We have some others that are proposed, so that'd be good for you to look at.
Who paid for that squirrely-looking sidewalk?
That sidewalk's the Vogue in Colleyville. If you haven't, they have a lot of those sidewalks.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No. The next project
Skateboarder.
is the Starnes Road project in Watauga, and I apologize, I don't have a before picture for you, but this is a project as it's in progress. And on the right, you see the completion, the 2-lane with a center turn lane going from US 377 over to Pebblebrook. And I know from talking with the city officials that the city has received quite a number of responses from commuters, positive responses. Very thankful for the improvements to that project, that road. And then Gateway, I mentioned to you before, you can see on the left, this is before any construction began. Now we have a 4-lane divided with medians and turn lanes. This is open to traffic right now. Items for further consideration. We had talked before, there's been some discussion with regard to the project scope changes. I believe that there was a desire to come back for a work session with you to discuss how we would like to proceed with those scope changes in the future. We're still receiving those. In fact, we anticipate officially hearing from the cities of Keller and Saginaw scope changes to Ruth Snow and Longhorn. And so at some point in the future, staff will be happy to work on setting up a work session for that. And then with regard to the Fort Worth Transportation Authority Southwest and Northeast Rail Project, this is the project that the court desired to fund with the $20 million that is set aside in our program for transit. And this project is...
For mass transit.
Yes, for mass transit. And the last conversation I had with the T, this project is scheduled to go to construction in 2011. And so we're getting close to that. And what I would suggest is that if the court desires, we would like to have the Fort Worth Transportation Authority's staff come and provide us with a more thorough, detailed update to the project if you so desire.
On the work session or the workshop, I would suggest that we hold that after the November election. I know that there are at least some municipalities that have a bond package that they're going to be voting on that will affect if they move forward in some of our projects. So
far, the only scope change project that has not been approved by this court is mine. So I don't know why we even need to have this discussion.
You might have other ones coming up.
Hardly.
I appreciate the report, Randy. I guess, again, what I think we were looking for here was a reconfirmation with the cities that they weren't going to be pulling projects down because of increased costs in projects. And I hear you saying that that's not the case, that they're continuing on with the projects, and so we don't, I think your question was, is there money that we could be redirecting to other projects? Right. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be any money left to do that with.
At this point, I've not heard from any city officially withdrawing those projects for those reasons.
And Your Honor, that's... At what point do we get down the road here when we start asking that? Because you've got some of these that are out past 3 years. We're going to do the same thing maybe in a year, and if they keep delaying and delaying, at some point we've got to say we need to take that money and put it somewhere else.
I think that's going to be a discussion that the court needs to have. If you go back to the slide that shows the red, yellow, and blue, I think that's, to me, that tells you that, and I'm trying to get there real quick. I can find it real quick.
While he's getting there, go back one more.
Well, these projects weren't scheduled or called
go back one
to
more.
be 3 years out when we started.
That's correct.
And now we're 2 years out in this deal, and these people are telling us it's going to be
right
3
here.
years or more.
But
we're talking 5 years now.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but now look at this schedule right here. We told them to be ready in 3 years. Mm-hmm. If they'd all been ready in 3 years, we'd have been telling 160 million of them that we ain't got any money for you. So we can say that, but our payment schedule was scheduled to go out for 10 years.
Okay.
Randy, go to that next slide.
Well, the vast majority of it comes year after next.
Red, yellow, and blue.
I'm sorry, I was going the wrong direction.
Right.
10 and 11. So.
This is a slide you're...
Any of that money until after that.
Just to point out on this particular slide, have you seen like on the 3 years or more, you have those, there's 21 projects that are delayed 3 years or more. 4 of those projects are in some form have already started. And then like the 1 year to 3 year out of the 31, 22 have started some type of activity, either buying right away or doing the engineering work and things like that.
It's still the same problem, that we've got projects that they were told originally, and I see where you're saying on the cash flow. We've got projects where there was $7 million allocated or whatever, it doesn't really matter. We're going to put half, the city's going to put half, and they're going to do this job in 2012, and that job now is $14 million, and we're only going to put up 3.5, and the city's going to now, instead of putting up 3.5, they got to put up $11 million. That's the problem. That's where we're going to That's where these cities are going to start going, ooh, we can't do this. And we're sitting here now with other projects that are ready to go that aren't on this list that we could be taking care of. So, I mean, and I understand we got to go through the process, but these cities that submitted the projects should have been, they need to be sure that they've got their funding in place based on what it's going to cost in 2012, not what they thought it was going to cost in 2006. It's time's killing them.
I would point out too, Commissioner, in some cases, the funding that TxDOT's available funding has been allocated in a particular year, and maybe a year that's later than what was originally anticipated. So there are some cases like that. That doesn't apply to all of these delays.
I think the longer this goes, the worse it's going to get.
Was there ever any mention, and when the committee was doing the scheduling, that if they didn't have something ready to go by a certain length of time, that theirs would be removed?
There was never a discussion of any hard, fast rule with regard to the Project Evaluation Committee discussions on that particular issue. Our concern, the concern of the Project Evaluation Committee at that time was on the leverage funding, making sure that the city had investment into the project and to other.
Well, I think the election will be interesting because I know the city of Arlington's got a very significant transportation package out. That if that doesn't go, then there will be a lot of them that won't go for Arlington.
And that's why we're suggesting that we wait until after that November election, so we see what those bond elections look like. Thank you, Randy.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Your Honor, that's all we have this morning, but this afternoon.
Commissioners Court will now recess to open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under sections 551, 1071, 072, 074, 06.